Welcome back to another DNVR Avalanche season preview video. This is the big one. We're talking about all of the Avalanche forwards. A lot of guys to talk about. A lot of new guys, a lot of returning guys, a lot of big guys, a lot of small guys. Little bit of everything. The conversation starts, though, with the battle for the 4C spot. I think we've all kind of come to our conclusion at this point in the preseason that it's probably Fredrik Olofsson that is getting first crack at that job.
Yes.
Is he ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not Peter Holland.
It's not Peter Holland.
Just checking.
But I think if you're him, it's a dream job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is. It is an honor to be behind those quality centers and to bring that element of, being trusted to be the fourth line guy. We all know that a fourth line's very important if you want to go deep in the playoffs, and just look at Vegas last year. So I do believe he's ready for it. I do believe it was a great pickup, and I do believe they had targeted him, obviously, beforehand by going to get him. And, I think that's his job to lose right now.
I would agree, and this isn't to take anything away. I have zero doubt Ben Meyers will get into plenty of games this year. Yep. Megan, what's it going to take for either of these guys to earn a full-time spot in the NHL?
Building trust with Jared Bednar specifically.
Okay.
And that's not the easiest thing to do.
It is not.
Took Logan O'Connor even
He's been hurt before.
time. He's been hurt before. It even took Logan O'Connor. Like, Logan O'Connor's ascension to the NHL and becoming a full-time NHL player required building trust over time. And it meant to not getting a full NHL-length season out the gate. And so I think Fredrik Olofsson is in similar territory, because I think the responsibilities of the fourth line center are even heightened, and the entirety of the fourth line is intended to play very responsibly. And so there's very little room for mistakes to be made. I think there's going to be some allowances granted, because Fredrik Olofsson is also just joining the Avs, learning a little bit more about how they like to play. I think he's a very natural fit for how Colorado wants to play, but there is going to be a learning curve too, and how they like to defend is going to be something that he's going to especially have to incorporate in his game pretty immediately, is where I'm going with this. And so the sooner he can do that, and also find ways, this feels like a very tall order, and also find ways to have an impact shift by shift, a variety of different ways, because he is going to be counted on, likely, on the penalty kill. It might not be the primary guy. I don't suspect he'll be like a primary penalty kill forward that is utilized there, but he has to be able to get reps in there. He has to be reliable on that fourth line with an O'Connor and a Cogliano type. And it's a little bit of a tall order, but the trust that he built with Dallas last year is why I think the Avs targeted him the way that they did. He was the next man up when Jamie Benn was suspended in the Vegas-Dallas series for a reason. And that's why I think his path to getting here has followed the archetype of the Logan O'Connor path. There are a lot of similarities between these two players, and he's just going to have to kind of look to his line mates, honestly, as role models in what he needs to be to stick in the NHL.
And the other guy who I'm sure will get time in that spot, who does Ben Meyers have to pay to get an assist in the NHL? What's it going to take for him to play with someone that can finish a play?
His eyes.
Everybody's looking at me because I love Ben Meyers.
He is the Ben Meyers guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Meyers, it's just some of it is he's been snake bit, but the reason we're not having a bigger Ben Meyers conversation is because he's lost his preseason battle to Fredrik Olofsson.
Yep.
It's
just true.
Yeah, I just think that's where it is he'll play for the Avs at some point this year. But last year was a hard year for him to learn on the fly, and with a constant rotating cast of guys around him, I think the consistency of the lineup this year should help. But, I mean, Ben Meyers has to help Ben Meyers. You know, he's got to play good, smart, quality hockey, and we haven't seen enough of that from him. He was a guy that, as a fourth liner last year, he was effective in that he didn't hurt you very much. You were fine that way, but you didn't get a ton out of him offensively, and,
Well, and look at how last season ended, right? A bottom six in that playoff series that scored 0 goals.
Yeah.
And did make some mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, I think to answer the question, too, is if I'm Meyers or Olofsson, I look at Cogliano, because consistency is longevity in this game. I said that the other day. I'll say it again. So in all three zones, I think Meyers needs to be more consistent with his habits, more consistent with, and that's how he's going to get more offense. You know what I mean? And he's probably gun shy a little bit, right? You're on the fourth line. You don't play that much. You don't want to get scored on. Therefore, it takes away from, but you have to figure out a way to put it all together. And I think that's where he's lacking. And I think that's where Olofsson's got a little bit of a leg ahead of him on that.
Yeah, and you ask, how do you build trust? That's it. It's consistency. That's for a coaching staff is looking for guys that they will settle, and we see this across the entire league. Every coaching staff does this. They will take guys who are not nearly potentially as good as other guys if they know what they're going to get every night. They say, oh, okay, yeah, this guy's not going to score 15 goals this year or anything like that, but I know exactly what I'm getting out of it, and that's Colorado's. That's what Logan O'Connor has done. It's Andrew Cogliano's made an entire career of it.
Yep.
His transition is into a hard fourth line guy at this stage of his career is entirely because coaches understand what they will get out of him, and that's what Fredrik Olofsson and Ben Meyers both strive for. Is that's how you earn that trust. A day in, day out. You know, you do the same thing in practice. You do the same thing in games. You don't hurt the team.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And this is where last year was tough for Ben Meyers and where I have sympathy for him. He goes down to the American League and almost immediately gets hurt. And so building traction last year in his first full pro season was difficult to do. And that's what he needs to do then in this year. Whether he's getting games in Loveland or up with the Avalanche, he has to find a way to make an impact, especially in Loveland. And he started to at the American League level at the end of last year because goal scoring and production wasn't an issue at the college level for him. And he started to find the finishing touch at the American League level. He just needs to start putting these pieces together at the National League level. And that's just the next step. And hopefully with a full runway ahead of him, he can start adding these building blocks because he's pretty good in the faceoff circle. He became more responsible away from the puck. That was something he focused on very specifically at the American League level. If he can add that final building block of the finishing touch at the National League level, that is where he could separate from Freddie Olofsson for that fourth line centerman job.
Yep. Whichever one of them is able to produce more effectively will eventually be the one who earns that job. I do believe that.
The guy that brings together the two guys that are flanking him.
Yep. And I do want to get to the rest of the starting lineup, but first I want to get to Kurtis MacDermid. The Avs have been very vocal about him being a forward specifically this year. Kurtis MacDermid, though, the Avs were very vocal about him being a forward this season. Eric, we know you're the MacDermid guy. We know you're all about all the things he brings that isn't necessarily the actual hockey skill. Do you expect him to play half the season for Colorado this year?
Yeah, I do. I think what you see is what you get right now in those numbers right there. I think you're going to see him play half the games, and I do believe, and again, we'll all argue it to death, he does bring an element that nobody else in that 23-man roster brings. And he brings, again, I get flack for the word feeling, but he brings something where Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon, yes, I am not Neanderthal or whatever you want to call that, like craziness of back then, and I know this is a different hockey game today than it was 10, 15 years ago. And I love it because the skill's so high, and it's awesome to watch the hockey right now. But there's still an element of intimidation out there, and I still believe that the big fella brings something there. He brings the room together. You just have to watch day in and day out at practice. There is something that he brings there. And again, it's different than other guys, and I think he's the lone soldier on that element that he brings.
He also brings the unique element of being the only guy on the roster that doesn't belong in the NHL. In terms of what he does on the ice.
I agree with AJ on that one.
Just in terms of as purely as a hockey player.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. I'll move on.
We can leave it there. Those are the two sides of the Kurtis MacDermid conversation. We've had it many times.
I'll add one small thing.
Go for it.
It's building off of what Eric is saying in looking at Mies Wood and Russ Colton as something of pests on the ice. I do wonder if they can feel more comfortable to be 100% versions of themselves with Kurtis MacDermid in the lineup.
You do, trust me. There is a big difference.
Well, pretty confident he's going to be on the Avs roster this year, so they can feel that comfortability if that's what they're looking for. Guys that are actually going to be in the lineup on opening night, though, Andrew Cogliano. He's been in the no-contact jersey all preseason, but he sure isn't playing like it. an unknown quantity at this point. I do think there is a conversation about how his play really did take a bit of a downturn last season, even if he was scoring goals. They just need him to show up and be a stable veteran on that bottom line, right? You're not asking a ton out of this guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy where I do buy the intangible conversation. He's loved in that room, and a leader in that room. Not just loved, but he is loved as specifically as a leader. And I said this last year, I'll say it again this year. I don't care what he does during the regular season. It's not why he's here.
Yep.
Does not matter to me. I don't care what his on-ice impacts are. I would like for him to take less back-breaking penalties in big game situations.
Some bad ones, yeah.
Because we saw way too much of that last season, where it wasn't that he took a ton of penalties, it was that, boy, they all felt real bad when they happened.
Oh.
And so, like, fine. He's not here for any of that. He could have 0 points in 82 games, and it's just not why he's here. It's entirely because when the postseason started 2 years ago, he was a monster. He's here because of that, and he's here because of the leadership. He's here because he is consistent. He's reliable.
Yep.
He fights through injury. He's a warrior. He's got that toughness. He's got the desire to win day in, day out. He's a pro's pro. You know, understands what to bring to the rink every day. He's an example for everybody in the organization to try and follow. All of the good things that you say about Andrew Cogliano, he just, you know, a high-end human being at this point, not a great NHL player. But again, that's just not why he's here. He can help you enough. He's a good penalty kill guy, and he's got the speed still to be functional in the NHL. He's fine. He's a fourth-line guy. He's probably a low-end fourth-line guy right now, but the intangibles on him are so high that it's fine. You live with it.
The other side, you guys can add more to Cogliano if you want. I just think that conversation is pretty straightforward at this point. Logan O'Connor on the other wing of that fourth line, pretty established as a bottom six NHL forward at this point in his career. Is the opportunity for LOC this year the fact that he hopefully won't have to play over his head, assuming a bit more health for Colorado this year?
Absolutely, because we talk about how consistency helps every one of these players and how they didn't have the benefit of that last year, and that was true of the fourth line, and a fourth line that LOC, it's the role that he's suited to play for a reason, and I think he's stepping into a role similar to that of Andrew Cogliano, and that's where I think he takes that step forward, is being something of a teacher to young players that are coming up through the ranks, and an extension of the Nathan MacKinnons and the Andrew Coglianos, and setting the standard for what an NHL player needs to do to stick in a lineup. And that's where the conversations about some of these forwards we're talking about, the Riley Tufties, realistically, if you want to stick in an NHL lineup, this applies to Fredrik Olofsson and Ben Meyers too. You have to play to the level of Logan O'Connor, and that means matching the intensity, the energy, and the consistency of him. And that's where I think he is solid. Obviously, you want to see the production take another step, but in seeing him play a fourth-line role that looks right now to be a true fourth-line role, I think that's more feasible for him this year than it was last year, because it was in flux so much. His line mates were not consistent. This isn't to demerit Kurtis MacDermid, but that was at times who he was anchored to. And production is going to get lost in that way. And having true NHL forwards alongside him is only going to help him to take a step forward, because as far as the effort level that he brings every game, it's always there. I never doubt that. And I think that he has an opportunity to take that kind of a step forward this year.
I think Logan is a perfect fit for this lineup. You know, we all know once all the pieces of puzzles are there, he's a perfect fit right there in that spot. And I think he's perfect for Bednar. He's fast, he's tenacious. So if you mix that with Cogliano, smaller pieces of the puzzle, but very important ones.
I love Megan's point about LOC being the goal point you want to be at to play in the NHL. AJ, I know you talk about this a lot. I don't care what line you're playing on. If you're a forward in the NHL, you need to be able to score points.
Yeah.
And LOC is a guy who will give you 20-plus points a year. It's not going to blow you away. Sure, at times he has some finishing ability that lacks a little bit of something you'd like to see, but he will still hit that baseline of production that makes you an NHL player. And then you get the penalty killing. You get the wrecking ball type of play style that he has.
Yep.
And that's how you carve out a role in the NHL.
Well, and he posts. He's there every day.
Yep.
You know, he's available on a regular basis. And the thing about LOC, he's, for a fourth line guy, he's a high-end defensive wing.
Yep.
Very, very little bad happens against the Avalanche when he's out there. He's not a very good offensive player, but he's good enough. That's fine.
Yeah.
Plus,
fine.
he's the nicest guy in the room.
I was gonna say he's a great kid. He's a great kid. I agree.
It's a lot more telling when Megan doesn't say somebody's the nicest guy in the room. Those are the guys that you put eyes on. What's happening here?
They're just all in the room by themselves. So they're by default the nicest guy in that room. So
Well, and it's not like she's ever going to say a bad thing about a Payo.
that's
So
true.
true.
That'd be a tough angle to find right there. Let's move on to the new guys, the third line.
An entire new line of new guys.
3 guys that were not playing for the Colorado Avalanche last year. Start on the wing with Mies Wood. I think this is probably the guy that expectations are the lowest for of these new guys. And that's not a knock on him or anything. It's just the reality of who he is as a player. Another guy in some ways similar to Logan O'Connor. Skate real fast, run into a bunch of stuff, cause a bunch of chaos, but is coming in to add a little bit more of that to the Avs bottom 6 and a third line. When you're looking at Mies Wood, how easy should this transition be for him to fit it in Colorado? Is there going to be some work to do there, or is this a drop-in easy fit?
This is one of the easiest, most natural transitions that you'll see of a free agent and a fit with a new team. If he's not going to be in New Jersey, him being in Colorado is the
Next best.
the closest
Yep.
stylistic match that you could possibly ask for. It'll be extremely easy. They want to play fast. They want Mies Wood to just be Mies Wood. They're not going to ask him to do a single thing different.
He's fast. I mean, you're gonna see him if you go to a game at Ball Arena. He pops at you. I mean, he flies out there. Or if you're watching on TV, you're gonna see him through the screen. He's reckless at times. He's all over the place. You're like, whoa! And that's what he brings, and that's what the Avalanche love about his game. That's why they went and got him and gave him that 6-year deal. I think, like AJ said, he's a perfect fit, and I think something that was missing a little bit last year, especially with the injuries. You know, he's going to be a big factor, I believe, for the Avalanche if he ends up on that third line there.
They've really set him up for success, too, in who, even not knowing if it's officially Ross Colton and Tomas Tatar. It's going to be some combination, though, of players that can only make him better. And I think that's just another reason why I expect a good year ahead for Mies Wood, a step forward from where he was last year, just because he is a really good supporting cast.
It's look, I think a lot of it does come with those guys that he's going to get to play next to. You're talking about a guy in Ross Colton who has a 20-goal season under his belt. You're talking about a guy in Tomas Tatar who's been a 20-goal scorer for most of his career, had a 48-point season last year. He's going to get the opportunity to play with that offensive talent on a third line. If we're being honest, the Avs third line should be the better third line going up against most teams' third lines in the NHL this year.
To be honest, when Nikolai Kovalenko comes across at the end of the year, Mies Wood is probably on that chopping block.
On the odd man
And
out there, yeah.
Nothing against Andrew Cogliano, but your team would probably be best fit if it's Mies Wood and Logan O'Connor opposite of each other.
With whoever's in the middle.
Yeah, with the guy in the middle. I mean, maybe it's Cogliano, I don't know. But that's probably like we're talking about Mies Wood as like, oh, he's going to be a third line, and Logan O'Connor, there was 1 point difference between those two players last year. So, you know, they're very, very similar, very comparable guys.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that take. And you're putting Tomas Tatar on the other side of, maybe it ends up being Kovalenko, whatever. With Tatar, is this a versatility guy for Colorado? Is this a, hey, we can move him up and down the lineup on these wings. He can fill in and has enough offensive punch to play on a second line if we want him to. We'd like him on the third line. What's his fit here? What puzzle piece does he become, I guess I should ask?
I mean, the way I use him is he's a jack of all trades. You can use him anywhere. You can use him on the power play. You can use him on the first line if you have to one night or 2 nights. He's a serviceable guy. And he's a very smart, intelligent hockey player. I go back, I hate to give the Red Wings credit. I do. I don't like it. But they draft over, I'm talking about like 15 years ago, they drafted high IQ hockey players. And a lot of those players ended up playing for a long time in the NHL. And Tomas Tatar is one of those guys. Again, I do believe he's a perfect fit for here. He's a secondary role guy. He's not a primary role guy. He can, like I just said, if it's for a few games, but he's a secondary guy. I think he's going to thrive. And like you said, you're playing against other third lines, but you're also playing against 5th and 6th Ds. And I think these guys, him, Colton, and let's say it's Wood, are going to be able to feast on those guys around the league.
With Tatar specifically, what are the expectations for him in Colorado? He had a 48-point year in New Jersey. He might not have as much opportunity to move up in Colorado's lineup, depending on how other players perform, like a Jonathan Drouin. Do the Avs want half a point per game out of this guy, or can they live with it if it's a 35-point season?
At $1.5 million, you can live with it, but it would be below your expectations.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just given the track record and how long it is and who, but also, like, yeah, he's 32. There will be decline from this guy at some point, and yeah, it's fine. Like, you could live with it. It's fine. If it's like 10 goals, you're probably pretty disappointing because he's a shoot-first guy.
You want him to score.
Yeah. And you brought him in to be a second power play option as well. You would like to see him hang around in that 40-point range, that 2020, kind of where he was last year with New Jersey. If it's maybe a little less than that, that's fine.
It's a one-year deal for him. It's important for him to sort of
that's
capitalize on the boost that a lot of forwards coming to Colorado newly seem to benefit from. Evan Rodriguez, eventually Val Nichushkin gets to experience that Nazem Kadri. So, like, hopefully he has a similar effect in coming to this forward group specifically.
Look, if he had a 48-point season last year and he gets the Avs scoring bump, the Avs are winning the cup at that point. if Tomas Tatar becomes a 60-point dude in Colorado, watch out. All right. But I want to talk about a guy who I do think the Avs might be expecting a little bit of a bump from in production, in Ross Colton. Now, I don't know how that role develops over the year. There's a world where he does get a significant amount of time on the Avs' second line, depending on how things shake out. But Colton down the middle on that third line, this is a guy they specifically targeted to improve that depth scoring, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Colton has been brought in to do is, to use the Tampa Bay example, similar to what Blake Coleman was brought in to do to Tampa Bay a couple of years ago, is really bring an element, a competitive but skilled element to a bottom six. And if that guy has to play up in a lineup, he can. But Ross Colton is your 3C. This is no offense to Alex Newhook, of course, but as what they are as players today in this moment, Ross Colton is a much better fit for what the Avalanche need and want out of that third line center job. He's got a great shot. He's a good goal scorer, but he's a bull. He's very physical, and he's a go to the front of the net, meat and potatoes, very straightforward kind of guy with enough skill to play up in a lineup. And if he does end up getting a shot at 2C this year, it's maybe a little bit of a glimpse that the Avs wouldn't mind getting at some point to see if he could do.
Deal's there for a reason.
Exactly, to see if he could do that job and they could get a financial break at 2C over the next handful, over the life of that 4-year deal. So, and Ross Colton, for my money, Ross Colton has a chance to be the guy that we all look back a year from now, league-wide, and say, this was the steal of the summer.
Yep.
Because
a second-round pick for that guy.
His fit, his competitiveness, his goal-scoring ability, all these things, this could be a guy, Ross Colton could be a guy that, greatly outshines the production that he had last year. And the consistency of his role, he moved around in the Tampa Bay lineup a lot, and that consistency of role could be really useful for Ross Colton because he's so important for them, and he's going to be surrounded by these other guys we've been talking about.
Perhaps more than any of the new additions, his utility is going to extract max value from him because he can be used in all situations. They're already putting him on power play, penalty kill, and he's likely going to move up in the lineup at points, just on nights where maybe someone in that top six needs a little bit of a break. And so for that reason, too, they have a future plan for him in Colorado. He's another example from our pod from earlier today that will not have been recorded today, where we talked about he was handpicked by Colorado for a reason. They're extracting max value from him. They have expectations.
Here's what I like about him. He's not a silver spooner. Nothing's been fed to him. Everything's been earned in his career. You know, goes to UVM, right? Before that was USHL, right? Prep school, USHL, UVM. Goes to the American League, which is, in my book, an important factor in your development. Spends a couple years down there, right? Ends up to Tampa, wins the cup there. Obviously, secondary, third-tier guy. Now this is his opportunity. And when we talk about tough, like Kurtis MacDermid's tough. He's tough. Like he's fighting tough. He's feared around the league for that part. But Ross Colton's tough. What I mean by that is every face-off, you know you're going to get whacked on the shins, or you got to be ready to out-compete him, or you're going to have a tough show. He's got that blue-collar mentality, but he's got the skill to go with it, and I do believe he knows where he comes from. He knows when he gets to the rink every day. He goes out there, and he's got to go and get what he deserves from the coaching staff, and I think he is going to be a fan favorite. I do believe that. I think everybody's going to love this guy, and I think that he's ready for the challenge, and he's ready to get on a bigger role than he had in Tampa.
I think it's interesting that we're having conversations about maybe Ross Colton is a second-line player in the future at some point. There are not a lot of top 6 guys in the NHL that will openly admit to you, yeah, there were days where I wasn't sure I was ever going to make it into the NHL. And that's where Ross Colton's hard work is coming from, I think, a lot of the time, is he's been through all of those battles.
Well, and potential to be a guy that solves problems that we aren't entirely sure exist at the moment.
Sure.
You know, we don't look at Colorado's PK unit right now and say, oh, that's a huge problem. But
you need centers.
We do look at center. We certainly look at the face-off guy on a PK and say, who's going to do it? You don't think that Ryan Johansen's going to do it. Nathan MacKinnon's not doing it. Fredrik Olofsson, the one weakness of him as a 4C is that part of his selling point is his versatility, but that also means he plays a lot of time not at center.
A lot of not taking face-offs.
Exactly. And Ben Meyers is already a better face-off guy than Olofsson is in that spot. So if Ben Meyers is the guy, you probably are more comfortable there. But Ross Colton could just be, he's been a very good face-off player in his couple of years in the NHL, and we know faceoffs is one of those things that guys get better at the more experience they get. Him not moving around in the lineup could make him a very good faceoff guy and a very important late game situation player.
Yeah,
and because we saw last year, JT Compher had to do almost all of it.
Yep.
This year, if he could replace kind of what Nazem Kadri did for them 2 years ago, strictly in that role.
When a face-off, skate off the ice.
Yeah, and not necessarily, I know Kadri wasn't like a PK guy, but they need somebody to do that.
Yep.
Because you love LOC and you love Cogliano and Nichushkin and Lehkonen.
That's a lot of wingers.
Yeah, those are all wings. Those are all guys that aren't winning faceoffs for you, and you don't want to start a PK going, well, they're going to have the puck. And so Ross Colton becomes an X factor in that he can do that, but also a second power play unit. Your first line draws a lot of penalties. So when your first line draws a penalty, your second power play unit starts, you want them to have the puck. He can help you in both of those areas. And that's one of those like it's like a small thing, but it's another area where he brings a step forward from what they had last season. Not just in Alex Newhook, but all the guys that vied for those positions last season.
Last thing on Colton here, $4 million deal. They say the magic number for the middle of the lineup guys is $100,000 per point. Is anything less than a 40-point year for Colton a disappointment?
If he has a 20-goal season, my answer is no.
If he has a 20-goal season, he's probably at least getting 35.
Yeah, and that's within spitting distance. That's fine for me.
Okay. Fair enough. Agreement?
I don't even know that I'd be disappointed if he didn't because of the utility of the player.
Okay.
But I would expect it to naturally
just
be
happen
there and above that, truthfully speaking, because of how he's going to be utilized. I don't have any doubt that a 40-point season is within his reach either.
Let's move up to the second line, but let's keep it rolling with the new guys. Let's talk about Ryan Johansen. This is an opportunity for Ryan Johansen to probably play with the most talent he's ever had in his career. And I get he won't be playing with MacKinnon. Rantanen maybe on the first line, maybe on the second line.
Yeah.
But there are now dudes ahead of him, right? He doesn't have to be that team's superstar. A lot of conversation to have here. He's been a pretty consistent 50 to 60 point guy in his career. Very early on, there were flashes of more than that. He has some injury problems, obviously was not healthy last year with those numbers you can see. What does he need to do to be successful in Colorado?
Really, it's just be the best version of Ryan Johansen. If the leadership group can hammer away at the message that he has to raise his game to what the Colorado standard is, which is a level that he's never consistently played at in his NHL career. He's had a good career. He's been a 1C and a 2C on some good teams. But he's never been in the situation that he's in now, where he's allowed to just be a guy. Because right now, you look at him and you probably say he's arguably the 5th or 6th best player in their top 6. He's never been in that spot before. He's always, he was the big hope for Columbus when he broke in. Then he was traded for to be the 1C answer in Nashville for half a decade. And even when he stopped being that option, he was at least a 1B.
Yeah.
A 1BC, I guess, for Nashville with Duchesne. And Duchesne spent a lot of time on wing as well because of Johansen. So Ryan Johansen's a good NHL player. And when he's stayed healthy, he's been a consistently productive one. The injuries have been a problem, but when they haven't been, he's been good. And Colorado for $4 million and no other assets given up. This is a free dice roll on a guy that you are once again leaning on your culture to bring out the very best in this guy. And it's the same conversation as Jonathan Drouin of he's really playing for his career and he's playing with a freedom that he has not had at this point in his career in terms of expectations. They're higher for Johansen because his role as 2C is a little more important than wing on some line for Jonathan Drouin. But with Johansen, this a good performance here sets him up to get another big payday and sets him up to potentially win a Stanley Cup.
Let's go to our 2C, or 2 on the couch. Ryjo. He's going to get power play time. He's going to get a significant amount of minutes, certainly every opportunity to provide that production. Is that enough? Is the offensive production, if it's there, enough? Or do we need to see some rounding out of his defensive side too?
I'm going to jump first, but it's a silver platter, right? This summer, they gave him a silver platter. Go make the most of it. For me, it's so simple. It's a dream situation if you're Ryan Johansen. You're playing a secondary role, like AJ just said. You've never been accustomed to that. You're a big guy. You're a perfect fit. You're going to get your power play time. You're not going to play against the top Ds on the other side of who you're playing against. I think it's very important. It's up to him to make sure his game is up to standard of the Colorado Avalanche and the culture. And I'm not saying it won't be. I'm just saying that it is a standard here that's been accustomed to the last couple of years by players coming in. So he's going to have to reform to that to make sure that he plays the right way, and not only to get production offensively, but to get wins as a team. And I think that's the big difference. I don't think he's been put in those situations. I think it's up there for him to take. If he takes it, run with it, then it's an awesome, outstanding move by the Avs this summer.
Well, and you talk about a silver platter, and the way that Colorado likes to execute defensively is very much a team defense strategy that, as a centerman, he absolutely has heightened responsibility defensively, but he also has support in his teammates, especially if they are going to be players like Valeri Nichushkin, Artturi Lehkonen, whatever combination of that. There's really no reason then for the defensive side of his game to wane.
Suffer.
Exactly. And so that is why he is being handed a silver platter for that to be an area that is improved upon from where it's coming from. One, because it is a standard that's been set in Colorado, though. In talking about how he has the support of his teammates, it is also a requirement and a standard for the entire team to be supportive in their team defense efforts. And as a centerman, it only gets heightened. And you talk about the advantage of winning the face-off battle. He's a big part of that. It comes down to possession, and that is just another thing that he adds beyond the production. And I think the call out about freedom, when we talk about Drouin, it's going to come up a lot too, is true of Johansen. I see it in what he brings to the power play in the bumper spot already, the versatility. And I think that it has opened a level of creativity with a little less pressure that is really going to complement the way that he likes to play. And it's going to overall complement the way that Colorado wants to play as well.
The one thing I would add about Johansen, I think will be an easy transition for him in Colorado. He played in a Nashville team that played a lot of their offense through their defense. They had a lot of high-end defense, and he understands how to play with a Roman Josi, with a Matthias Ekholm at the time. And he's going to come in, and he's going to see Cale Makar, Devon Taves do a lot of those similar things, maybe even better than that, and go, okay, I can work with these defensive guys that are activating into the play, that they run a lot of shots through that way. So I do expect that to transition well, especially in a place like a power play where you have Cale Makar working out up high.
Yeah. I want to see how it goes personality-wise more than anything else. Because he's going from a country club to a wolf pack. Mm-hmm. And I want to see how he fits in. I want to see how that kind of mentality, can he attach himself to that? Because I think he was comfortable in Nashville, and now he's not going to be comfortable in Colorado because he's going to have Nathan MacKinnon barking at him all the time. He's going to have Jared Bednar all over his ass to pick it up, to engage, to use his size, to play at a level that we've not consistently seen out of him in his career. I just want to see the effect that has on him. Because that's the kind of thing that it could bring out the absolute best of Ryan Johansen.
Or it could break him.
Or it could. And if it does not go well, he won't be here next year. Yep. I don't care what his contract is. He won't be here. They don't have the resources for wasted money. So it's for him, this is a 1-year trial. Do or die in Colorado. Prove you can be part of the solution and you weren't part of the problem in Nashville.
Yep.
And if he can't do that, then he will be gone.
All right, let's talk about the adult in the room in top 6 in Artturi Lehkonen.
The ultimate adult.
Someone's got to do the hard work up there, right? It's got to do all the digging, all the defensive responsibility, all the grinding. Lucky has fit in here incredibly well as coming in at the trade deadline. Obviously, they win the cup, but he shows up last year and has 51-point year in 64 games. Hits a level that no one was sure he was ever going to be in his career.
Yeah.
Some of that is playing next to MacKinnon. Obviously, they found great chemistry together.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll see more of that at times this year. But can Lecky be the guy, be a Mr. Responsible with no Gabe Landeskog for this year? Can he be a Mr. Fix-It for Colorado?
A low-end one, yeah.
Okay.
Let's be real. He spent most of his season next to Nathan MacKinnon and had 50 points.
For sure.
You're talking about a guy that is not a high-end offensive player, but all the things that he does well puts his team in good situations. He should be your 6th best player in the top 6. His speed, his hard work, all the two-way stuff is why he's there. It's to elevate the more talented guys, the more talented offensive guys around him. He is the guy that improves the level of those around him in that way. His the hard work and all that stuff, it enhances your skill guys. But his skill level in a vacuum is not as high as the guys he'll be around. And he might outscore Ryan Johansen just because that hard work goes a long way when you're playing next to really good players. And if he ends up next to Nathan MacKinnon a lot, he will have that kind of season again.
The Avs might need that out of him, depending on how things go with some of these other guys. With Lecky, they've added a good number of offensive weapons. Is there going to be a bit of a look at Lecky, maybe less important on a power play this year, more important on that defensive role? Maybe he gets some PK time, whatever it is. And we're about to talk about the other winger that we know has a good, effective defense. But for Lehkonen, what is the most important job for him this year for Colorado? I'll ask it that way.
It feels like such a cop-out to point to the versatility of Lehkonen, but there is a reason that even in these early iterations of the power play, he is still on PP1 now as the net front guy. I think that is a reflection of how they value him. And some of it is, like, even in just the preseason game, he does play a corrective role. He is sort of a Mr. Fix-It. And part of it's because he understands the way that Colorado wants to play so well. It was such a natural fit for him that he assimilated so quickly and so easily.
Yeah.
It's also because he's a smart hockey player. Like, the heavy forechecking presence is such a valuable thing, but even in his own end, there's a reason that, good stick Lecky comes to mind, and it's not only what he provides in the offensive end when he's, got his stick on the ice to tip in pucks. He's also pretty good defensively. And so it's the utility and the versatility of Lehkonen that I think is his value in the way that he makes an impact for the Avs in the top 6.
For me, he's like, when I say Sam Girard, or I've talked about that he's you just take him for granted. I think Lehkonen, you take him for granted. Like as a coaching staff, Lecky's there. He's a patch. Like I'll put him there. I'll put him here. I'll put him on the PPI. You can PK. He can play anywhere. I say to youth hockey kids all the time, you want to learn how to play hockey as a defenseman, why don't you put a tape of Devontae's, and he does everything right. He's my Devontae's up front. Artturi Lehkonen plays the right way. There's just no other way to explain it. He does everything right. He does all the little things that drive coaches crazy if you don't do them right, or if you don't do them on a consistent basis. He does them to a perfection. That's what separates him with the rest of the league. He's one of the best two-way forwards. He's one of the most coveted, that's the word, the French came out of me there, but the most sought-after guys in the NHL. Even like a couple of years ago, remember, I think he had 4 goals at the deadline in Montreal, whatever it was, and then, some people are like, oh my God, a second-round pick for this guy or whatever. That's a steal. That is a steal. This guy's he plays the right way. He brings something different than what MacKinnon brings or Rantanen. Obviously, he's not a top-tier guy, but he sure complements anybody, and he can do it all. He's a guy that once he's not in the lineup, and you can ask Bednar last year, he's not in the lineup, you feel it. You're like, oh boy, Lecky's not here tonight. Oh my God, my security blanket's not there. And that's why he's an important piece.
And then on the other side, you have another very strong defensive winger. Look, it's been a long offseason for Valeri Nichushkin. It's certainly been a long offseason for Avalanche fans in dealing with everything with Valeri Nichushkin. Season's about to start. The Avs and Nichushkin have clearly put whatever it is behind them at this point, whatever your viewpoint on it is. When it comes to the hockey on the ice, Nichushkin is ready to go this year. And what are we going to get out of him? Are we going to see the Valeri Nichushkin that's a defensive monster on a 60-plus point pace? Is he going to be there? Are some of those foot problems he had last year still lingering? Who is Valeri Nichushkin going to be in Colorado this season?
My biggest question is the skating, because we saw he was still a good player last year, but when he was battling the ankle injuries, that burst, that little extra with his speed was missing, and he lost some of his offensive effectiveness. If that's there, all bets are off. You could tell me he's going to have a 70-point year, and I believe you, because that's the kind of situation that he is in right now in terms of the talent around him and his elite two-way game. But if his skating is at the level we've previously seen,
Watch out.
yeah, he could be a monster this year. Obviously, he just needs to keep his head on straight.
Yeah.
Put the personal stuff behind him and make good choices and go play hockey. He's really good when he does that.
Nathan MacKinnon described him as one of the best players on the ice in the 2022 Cup run. And a lot of things have happened between then, just like even looking at the injury side of things. So that is hard to come back from. There's also not so much time removed from that point too, and there's a reason he gets the big contract because of that 2022 Cup run performance. I don't expect his regular season to copy-paste that. One, it's just unsustainable. But even his pace is projected last year in the games that he played, obviously didn't play a full 82 because he was still dealing with some injury things, was still high and comparable to what he had done in the 2022 Cup run year. And so in seeing that, the production isn't a worry for me at all. It's just Valeri Nichushkin showing up as the player that he has been before with the commitment that he's shown before, because this is the player that was the last to leave the rink, who is putting extra time in the weight room, and he just needs to continue to be that player and lean on his teammates this year too, and just continue to be what made Valeri Nichushkin so good in that 2022 season.
I think Bednar called him, a hunter before? This guy just hunts pucks. And if AJ, like AJ just said, if his ankle's holding up and the skating is there, look out. I wouldn't want to play against that guy. I don't. He's just on top of you. And when I say that, I'm not saying that he's going to abuse you physically. What I'm saying is that you don't have time to do anything. He's on top of it. He's stealing the puck from you, and then you look bad. So I think this is a guy, I agree with whatever it was. Bednar called him a hunter. He is a hunter, and he's one of the best at it in the league if the ankle's holding up.
And Lehkonen and Nichushkin together, especially if they're on different lines. Because we've seen together, they've been okay, not as much fun together as you would think. But on separate lines, that elite two-way element that both of those guys bring, yeah, really elevates your skill guys because they do so much of the dirty work at a high level. Why are they on power play units? It's not because they're so good at scoring goals. It's because they're elite puck retrievers. They go and they win. If they're going into a loose puck is headed into the corner and they have two defensemen headed for it,
they're going to win it.
Lehkonen and Nichushkin can come out often enough with that puck or move it to a teammate that there's an extreme value placed on that, especially in a man advantage situation. It's what those two guys do together. One of them is going to be playing with Ryan Johansen. That will help elevate his game. If they're both playing, I think right now, they're both roughly slated to play with him at the start of the year. The fun part about this forward core is that you can mix and match between all of these lines in any way that you want, and there's intrigue all over it.
You just see what works.
Yeah. And that's because Nichushkin and Lehkonen bring that really high-end defensive element.
And that's if maybe the skating isn't quite all the way there. Look, there's a certain level of production you need in the top six. You'd really like to see him hit at least 50 points.
Yeah, making $6 million, he has to.
But if it's 50 points instead of 60, but he's bringing you Selke caliber wing defense, you're fine with that.
Worth.
Yeah.
Worth.
Okay, let's talk about who knows if he ends up on the top line for the whole season or whatever, but the younger of the Halifax homies in Jonathan Drouin. One of the biggest question marks in the forward core this season, potentially one of the biggest upside swings for the Avalanche this season. I want to start here. Eric, give me your thoughts on Jonathan Drouin in French.
In French? I don't know how to speak French. Non, Jonathan Drouin va avoir une expérience incroyable avec Nathan MacKinnon. What I just said is I think it's a comfort level with Nathan MacKinnon. It's a known chemistry. Whether it's there or not, it doesn't matter. There's familiarity. He's coming into, and if they end up playing together, great. And they might not, like you just said. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think it is, like I said about Johansen, this is a silver platter for him to get his career back on track. He feels happy. The pressure of being a Quebecer in Quebec is tough, not just for Jonathan Drouin, for anybody that went through it. It is a tough experience. Now he comes here, it's a totally different mindset. It's an $850 deal, right? Mm-hmm. There is no pressure on the Avalanche or on the player except to just go out there, have fun again, smile. And again, if he does that, I don't think he's going to have 2 goals against like he did last year, right? Yeah. I don't think that's a low expectation. This guy can be a way better player, and he's been a way better player. I think it's going to be up to him to see, again, like Johansen, to make sure that he plays Avalanche-style hockey, to make sure he does the right things on the ice, and it's not just about, getting some points on the power play, but to make sure that 5-on-5 he's up to snuff, and he's up there to try to win a Stanley Cup like the rest of the fellas.
We've talked about it on other shows, but the freedom that he has in coming to Colorado has unchained him to a lot of the burdens that have been troubling before. And you see it in the creativity that he's leaning into. One, because he's being set up for success and being given opportunity to lean into the creativity. But even looking at the lineup that's going to, again, this isn't going to age well because we're recording this on the day that they're about to go play in Dallas. And so the power play units for this group heading over there looked different than what we're going to see at any point. Well, I shouldn't say that, but at most points hopefully for the Avalanche this season, it's some combination of Byram, Tatar, Drouin, Johansen. And they're talking about the power play, and there's an excitement across the room going back and forth because Ryan Johansen had left the room, and they're talking about, oh, we need to go tell Joe. We need to go tell him this because we want to try this thing. And there's this excitement and collaboration that's happening, and you know that that's just one glimpse at what is probably going through his mind in being able to lean into the parts that his strengths as a hockey player, which is the vision and it is the creativity, and he's just being given this full freedom to express himself as a player in that way. And he's still growing though. Like you see the defense has to step up to match what the Colorado's expectation is from him, but he's meeting that expectation and he's putting in that extra work, especially alongside MacKinnon. But as we've seen just in this preseason, in moments where he's not tethered to Nathan MacKinnon, you're still seeing the freedom and the creativity, and that's why he's here.
We've had two civil, realistic takes. Is this the hype beast on this side? Is it about to be unleashed?
Let him free.
When I think of Jonathan Drouin, I think of Shakespeare.
Where is this going?
The reason for that is I think of what Jonathan Drouin's career to this point has been is what it would have been like if Shakespeare worked at a newspaper. He had to write boring articles, straight up stuff, right? A talented guy, right? But he was confined by his surroundings. The environment caged the talent.
Oh, I love it.
And I think and what I think we're going to see from Jonathan Drouin this year is what we got out of Shakespeare. We're going to see a creative mind be brilliant. I think we're going to see a freedom. We're going to see the talent uncaged. We're going to see him outside of what he has done to this point in his NHL career. I don't think he will, Jonathan Drouin. I'm thinking of this in like terms of like he's a 60-point guy. So like I'm not talking about like, oh, he's going to be Jonathan Huberdeau, in Florida. But also, if he was, count me as one that would not be shocked if he has a 70 assist type of season. If he ends up being able to have the kind of two-way game that justifies him staying next to a Mikko Rantanen or a Nathan MacKinnon or both all season long. So I'm the hype beast when it comes to Jonathan Drouin. It's fine. I think that we're going to see talent flourish because the talent is unleashed. He is in a situation where he is not burdened by the world around him for the first time in his NHL career. I don't know that Shakespeare ever worked for a newspaper. But I think what we're going to see is that kind of talent, that kind of creative freedom on display from Jonathan Drouin. Because we talk about stylistic fits, this and that. What Jonathan Drouin does will play extremely well in Colorado.
You gonna write a few limericks this year? Yeah, is that
maybe? I just think that when you talk about fit and when you talk about a skill set finding a home,
makes a lot of sense.
There's no better situation than what we're going to see Jonathan Drouin in Colorado this year. The play style, the freedom, the lack of expectation, and now obviously I'm placing expectation there, but I mean he's not feeling the expectation from me.
Sure. Whereas
he would have felt it from the guy working the checkout counter in Montreal.
And the Avs do have a history of this going all the way back to Erik Johnson, bringing in guys who have maybe been overvalued in other situations.
Yeah. Because of draft position, because of these things that happened with Erik Johnson, it happened with Valeri Nichushkin, it happened with Andrei Burakovsky, it happened with Nazem Kadri. We've seen it. High profile. We've seen it on lower profile guys. We've seen it in high profile guys. And so that's why when I think of Jonathan Drouin, it makes me think of Shakespeare.
Plus, he's one of the nicest guys in the room.
I don't know if that was true for Shakespeare.
No,
so
I don't know that.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I hope my wife is talking about me right now around town the way he's talking about Drew. There's a lot of passion there and everything. It's awesome. I love it.
Two guys that don't need a hype beast left here. Starting with Mikko Rantanen. Just set the record for Avs goals in a season. I don't know what to say about Mikko Rantanen and in a minute Nathan MacKinnon. All-world players. Guys that are likely on Hall of Fame tracks, and the expectation is they go out and do it again this year.
Yeah, what do you think in terms of what Mikko Rantanen could do in a season? What do you think is unreasonable? What's a bridge too far?
70 goals.
Okay, so we're at 70 goals. Okay. Point-wise?
He could do 120 points. I don't think he will,
Okay.
but I think he could.
So we're at 70 goals and 130 points is more than we're comfortable.
Saying is possible.
What else do you need to say?
That those numbers are even higher for Nathan MacKinnon.
He's my favorite winger in the league. So has been for a few years. I love the big fella. What do they call him? The Moose. I love the Moose. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, sky's the limit. I don't think it's the space, like you said, like
Makar.
I agree.
But I do believe that. Wow. I mean, this guy can duplicate or do better than last year. Absolutely.
Moose are earthbound, so it definitely makes a lot of sense that the sky is the limit here. But what I love about Mikko Rantanen and last year, aside from the 105 points and 55 goals, is the maturity and growth as a player. You talk about the standard that's been set in Colorado, and the guys at the top who have said it are Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, and they both wear that a little bit differently. And the way that Mikko Rantanen wore that last year was by being a really important leader and a more vocal leader, but also through his on-ice play and merging the physicality component. It got so much better in his game, I think, last year than I'd ever seen it before. I think that he was using his physicality in such an effective way, and obviously not at the expense of his production. And it just made him one of the best wingers in the league for a reason.
Two reasons why I think we might see a reduction in Mikko's production this year. One, he's doing a lot of those little things well. And two, I've already been on record saying this, but I truly believe we are about to see a special season from Nathan MacKinnon. I think he's about to do stuff that has never been done before in an Avs jersey. And yes, I know Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg played for this team.
Can I just ask a Mikko question real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I'll ask the three of you this. When we look back on it, who has a better prime? Mikko Rantanen or Teemu Selanne?
Well, Timo did get over 70 goals. But
The one
different
time,
era.
Yeah.
Hard to say right now because Mikko's just starting to enter his prime.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think you could make an argument that it ends up being Mikko.
I'm a big Timu fan too. I am. I really like him.
Best Finnish player ever, yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
For now.
absolutely.
No offense to Jari Kurri.
No,
who's also
I'm a big
amazing.
Jari Kurri fan.
Come on.
Jerry, I love you. Yeah, I do believe that Mikko ends up being ahead of him. But, wow, if that ends up being the case, hats off. What an unbelievable career he's going to end up having. Great question.
I don't have any skin in this game.
Okay, I was just curious, just because we look at Selanne as like the untouchable Finn, right?
Yeah.
He was that guy, but I'm wondering, like, if Mikko Rantanen's putting up 55 goals and 105 points, if he comes even close to this for the next couple of years, he's starting to chase Timo.
Genuinely crazy that for the rest of time, the conversation of who's the best 10th overall pick is now going to be Timo
Yeah.
and Mikko.
Right. So that's just to illustrate the feelings about Mikko Rantanen that we have collectively.
Plus, he's one of the nicest guys in the league.
The one area of the emotional maturity I would like to see actually mature this year is just leave the refs alone, dude.
Yeah.
Leave them be.
But I'm going to plug in good old Jerry again, too, though. Good old Jari Kurri. I mean, DB him if you want. Wow, what a player he was.
Yeah,
I
of
mean,
course.
Are you kidding me? This guy was amazing, and people don't realize that. Oh, he's playing with Gretzky, and he's scoring 70 and 60 a year, and 8 years in a row, 1 year deals. 8 years in a row, 1 year deals, and he was like, I don't care. Well, next year 70.
See, money is the motivator.
And I'm telling you, this guy was a great PK guy. People didn't realize that about him. Such an underrated player, And again, love Timu, but love Jari.
Okay, so those are the top two Finns.
Absolutely, and I think Mikko ends up being on top of
That's what I'm saying. Can Mikko chase
He's a
down? We'll
special
go with
player.
both of those guys.
He is a special player, yes.
We've basically given you a whole extra podcast today at this point. But Nathan
Yeah.
MacKinnon, would anyone blink if he had a 130-point season?
No. I mean, I might blink a lot because it would be amazing.
Well, sure, but
But in that case, if he has 130 points, every time you blink, he's probably racking up another
Yeah,
one.
right. I don't want to blink because then I'll miss a goal.
Exactly. There goes 5 points.
Here's what I think motivates him besides winning, wanting to win Stanley. Like obviously he's won it now. He's got that hunger. But I do believe somewhere, somehow in his mind there, people are talking about right now, like, well, can McDavid get 160 points this year, right? I think Crosby said, I think he's like, hey, if this guy can't, I can. And I everything you do, I can do just as good or better. And I do believe that's his mentality. So I think it'll be interesting to see this year. But I do believe you're going to see, I agree, something special this year from him.
Every waking moment of Nathan MacKinnon's life, he's thinking about one thing, and that's winning. That is it. That is the one consistent thought that goes on in that kid's mind. And he's really good at winning. When you have that guy leading your offense, when you have Cale Makar leading your defense, when you have all these auxiliary pieces that we've given so much praise to over these videos, it's hard not to feel real good about this Colorado Avalanche team this year. I don't have anything else to add. We're going to wrap up this preseason video. This has covered all of the Avalanche players. We still have our division previews with our horribly wrong predictions coming your way. So keep it tuned to the YouTube channel for that. Like and subscribe. That helps us out a ton. We are out of here, and we will see you in the next video.